Good afternoon. The Oklahoma City Water Utility Trust meeting of September 27th will be in order. Minutes from the September 13th meeting. Second. I don't see how the mayor hooks this thing on there. Well, he puts it on his tie. He's a TV guy, right? He puts it on his tie. There you go.
Mr. Chairman, in your minutes, I just want to point out to you, we had a commercial paper item that in your previous meeting that we postponed to this meeting, and we made an error in compiling the agenda, and it is not listed in today's agenda. We'll bring it back to you as soon as we can.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the September 13th meeting. Are there questions or comments? Voting, please. Minutes are approved. We got an extra vote there somewhere. There you go. The next item is the consent docket.
Move it subject to individual consent.
Second. We have one person signed up to speak on item 3B5. Mr. David Ellis. If you just come to the microphone there, please. Just give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is David Ellis. I live at 3712 Northwest 69th Terrace in the Edgewater Addition. I'm a board member of the Friends of Lake Hefner, and I'm here today to commend and thank you for the improvements that you are about to make on the east side of the Lake Hefner Drive, south of the East Wharf area, and also the improvements on the parking lot. That area has been in need of repair and replacement for quite some time, and now that we have a very nice park down there, we're very happy to see the improvements being made there. I know we're of an asphalt and concrete mentality in replacing roads, but we have become aware of another system of paving that we think would be worthy of your consideration. It's made by, or I guess copyrighted or patented by the Puris Arsberg Company in Germany. And their product is called Ecroaster. It's a recycled plastic grid system. It's sold in this country under EcoGrid and StabilaGrid. After surface preparation is done, I'm told that this product can easily be installed by volunteers. It can be filled with earth and grass grown on it, or it can be filled with small gravel for a paved road or parking lot. The reason that we're thinking of this is that it's a much more ecological friendly product than concrete and asphalt. It's more of a filtration system that will filter oily runoff from a parking lot or from a road. It's absorbent, has an extremely long life. We wouldn't be dealing with cracks and fissures opening up from our wonderful clay soil shifting underneath the asphalt and the concrete. And I have a feeling that it is substantially cheaper than either of those two products. So I don't know if it's too late to get it in on this project or not, or for it to be considered for that project. But in future projects, I would hope that we would explore the possibility of using either this product or something similar to it rather than the asphalt and the concrete approach.
We used something similar on the face of the Lake Hefner Dam as we were repairing and restoring the roadway and the surface of the dam. It's not, I don't believe, the same product, but something similar. Again, you're filling it with earth and helping the grass grow and helping
the company website touts it as being used on riverbank erosion and this sort of thing. So it's a very multi-use product.
I too like the idea. I believe it's too late for this project for a reason. What we're trying to do in this particular project is give adequate access to the new playground.
Right.
The playground's been complete for some time. We have kids coming in from across the country for this unique facility who have great mobility challenges, usually. So in this case, we were looking for smoothing the surface to make absolutely certain that children could get there. I realize this is roads and not trail, but we also know that all of us walk on roads like we do on trails, too. So that was the concept. It's true that we did not consider the option that you suggest, Mr. Ellis, and we will go back and take a look at it. Again, I think too late for this project, but for use, we have a lot of property where that might be a good use. I don't know.
Okay. And again, and
Well,
thank
it's
you
certainly
for...
something we could look into in the future. I suspect it is too late, given the status of this project, but certainly something we could look at.
Mr. Ellis, in your research, have you found examples of this kind of product being in service for some time? Life cycle costs are important to the city.
They estimate it would be at least 10 years before any breakdown would be occurring, and it's all made of recycled plastic material. So it's
They,
a
the
win-win on both sides.
manufacturers say that it's going to last 10
Yes.
years. Do you know of any project where it's been installed for some time that we could contact the owners and see what they're experiencing?
No, but I'm sure that we could certainly
Well,
find out.
Okay. I'm sure our public works people will follow through on that, and our engineering people.
Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate to ask our trust engineer if he's ever heard of this?
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson. We have heard of this product. We were involved in the dam face reconstruction, and we have used a similar product for emergency access roadways with earth and grass on top, but they're not used frequently like a parking lot would. But that's our only application that we've used. I know it's out there, and it's beginning to be used more frequently as a pervious paving alternative. Might be worth looking at in the next.
Is it working out pretty well?
On the emergency access, it is. I don't have any examples that are long-term on the parking lot type.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Are there any other comments on the consent docket? Hearing none, voting, please. Consent docket's approved. Next item is a concurrence docket.
Move the item, subject to individual consideration.
Have a motion on the concurrence docket. Are there either matter to be considered individually? Hearing none, voting, please. Concurrence docket's approved. Next item is emergency construction context, but we need 4 votes, and we don't have 4 here, so we'll just have to defer all those contracts, I guess, to the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
We'll hold them to the end of the docket in the event that Mr. Graves comes up, if we can, and we'll go to the item 6, which is easement. Comments on item 6?
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the easement under item 6. Voting, please. Easement's accepted. Next item is reports. 2 reports.
Second.
Motion
and a second to receive the reports. Are there comments?
Mr. Chairman, and I think the only way I can sum up the status of the water system is it's still dry. We are still hopeful for rain. We think it's probably another 10 days out, and looking gravely at whether to take water from Lake Canton and face the consequences. We're watching the groundwater table between here and Lake Canton, which is down a little over 2 feet, as a tool to monitor, to look for possible take date. Secondly, we have a report on your agenda seeking guidance about or some encroachments that we've identified on the Lake Hefner Reservation. they're very permanent facilities. We've asked one property owner to remove some temporary facilities that we found in our inspection of the lake. We are essentially are going to try to work politely and firmly to resolve encroachment issues that we have at the south end of the lake. And I noticed Mr. Ellis would like to speak on this item as well.
Want to come back up, Mr. Ellis?
Thank you. First of all, again, I want to commend you for addressing these issues of encroachment on the lake area property, and also kind of tongue-in-cheek make a comment for you to consider soft encroachment to also be the large amount of illegal parking, especially in the East Wharf area when there are events, and particularly when Louis is putting on a concert. Not only is the road safety hazard, but also the trails are being blocked. I don't know how this issue can be addressed with events like Red Man Triathlon, in which there were a large amount of cars that were parked illegally on the grassy area. Whether you can vote to give certain events bypasses as far as the parking requirements, or exactly what's necessary to get better enforcement and compliance with the posted regulations at the lake.
We might look into, when we have an event like the triathlon, we might look into some kind of a shuttle system where we would require them to do that. That's something we want to note. If we have a recurring event, we ought to probably make a note of that, so that next year when they come back, we could tell them that generally we expect the event promoter to take care of those problems.
And I'm sure they will be amenable to.
So my
doing
guess
that.
is that we could require them to have a shuttle or something whatever we've asked them to do. So if we could just be sure that next year when they get their permit, or anybody else that gets one, you said Louis has concerts sometimes, had live music. Is that
Right?
They don't have to have a special permit for that because they're doing it on their own premises. But I'll just go talk to them.
We'll follow up with our lessee at East Wharf about that compliance.
Have a conversation with them about
The Red Mountain Triathlon, as you mentioned, has a specific use permit. We'll follow up about the details on that permit and its practical application.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to receive the reports. Voting, please. Reports are received. Item 8, items for individual consideration. The first one is the ratification of the trust payments from August 10th to September 20th.
Second.
Motion and a second to ratify the payments. Voting, please. Payments are ratified. Next item is a resolution to work with municipal council to prepare ordinance amendments fixing the winter period consumption calculation.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Weingart will briefly describe this for your audience.
Mr. Chairman and trustees, this issue has come up seasonally for quite a number of years. Last time it was brought up, trustees asked that we come up with an alternative that would not require them to readdress it in the future, where we could fix the dates in advance of the months occurring so that the citizens, the customers, were assured of the periods specifically before they use the water, rather than us making the determination in the spring after they've used the water. Second slide. Staff has completed an analysis of the winter period consumption-based methodology and is ready to offer to you the option of fixing the period for calculation for December, January, and February. This change would allow residential customers to perform outdoor landscape irrigation during the months of October, November, and March without such use being considered in the calculation of their winter period average, except in a situation where we could not read the meters in February, like when we had the winter this last winter. Then we would use the March to average with the February to normalize that in those situations, which are very rare for us. Should this change be supported by AQUIT, staff would work with the Municipal Counselor's Office to prepare an ordinance amendment to be presented to Council for its consideration. If it approves that ordinance amendment, then we could apply those to sewer billings beginning in April 2012. So there'd be plenty of advance notice. Next slide. We culled through our records and looked at active accounts for December 2009 through March 2011. And just as a reference, even though it's in the memo, the basic process is where we look at the 6 months prior to April 1, and we settle on an average of 4 constant months to determine the winter period consumption base, which sets a ceiling on the maximum amount that a customer could be charged for April 1 forward through March. It doesn't determine what they will be charged. Their actual consumption will be compared to the ceiling to do that. When we did our analysis, we excluded from our analysis accounts that had a lot of moving from place to place. We tried to look at customers that had continuous use and not some sort of meter reading inaccuracy. We excluded those as well. We ended up with 116,699 accounts. 60% of 191,000 accounts were concluded. So we had a very large sample group to do our analysis. 75% of single-family gallons billed were included in this sample set. 6.6 billion gallons of 8.8 billion gallons billed. So we had a very good analysis. Next slide. When you look at this analysis, it shows that 67.32% of our accounts would not experience a change in their winter period consumption base if we would have applied this new methodology during that period of time. That was a fairly dry period. 27.62% would have seen a change by 1,000 gallons. Okay? Not a large amount, but 1,000 gallons. A total of 4,752 of accounts, 4%, would have had an increase between 2005. 4.37% would have experienced a 1,000 reduction. 812, less than 1%, would have had reductions 2 to 5,000. So what we're seeing is that a fairly minor change. We see this occur every year when we do this analysis anyway, using the other period. It's just that we believe that this one is more consistent and will result in less change over time. Next slide.
Let me ask a question. Go back here to that last slide, if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
This is interesting. It gives the customers who would be affected by this change. How much value, or what is the dollar amount that, for instance, number 1 here, one increase would experience?
About $2.60, something like that.
And that was the maximum that is
Yes.
increased? Okay.
Yes.
That's good.
And we know that we have some outliers in any kind of analysis that you have to look at, but we think that we have a very large group of people that would not be negatively impacted. Change in actual gallons for the 12-month period, we saw that 70.26%, 81,996 accounts, would see no change in actual sewer billings. A total of 26,652, 22.84% of accounts, would see billings from 1,000 to 12,000 gallons or more a month. We have those kinds of events occur already. So it's not necessarily the result of changing the number of months used in establishing the maximum ceiling gallons. So this is normal for us in the current process. Next slide. So looking at the net effect of applying this evaluation, In this case, due to the kind of weather we had, we saw a 2.6% increase in gallons billed during the sample period. We performed the same analysis in a future year. We could see a slight decrease. Historically, we have seen a swing from year to year in the 3 to 4% from year to year in the calculation the way it currently exists in the ordinance. And you may recall at one time when we had a very extreme drought period previously, we went in and made an adjustment, one-time adjustment to deal with that. We think it's less likely we would need to tweak this in the future if we move to this alternative recommendation in our process. Next slide. Because weather patterns, whether you're talking about snow or you're talking about drought, will always influence the way we establish the winter period consumption base. And the goal of using that process is to set a ceiling on the amount we could charge a customer for winter consumption in lieu of establishing a requirement to put a meter on the sewer discharge like we do on a bottling company or a manufacturing company. They put production meters on the water they use for products, and we measure that and we subtract it from their meter coming into their facility, and we only bill them for the net wastewater. We don't require that level of process for a typical residential customer because of the expense compared to the difference in their use. So we're basically trying to measure the winter use as a surrogate for the use that actually would go into the sewer system. So that's the process we have there, and that winter period consumption base establishes the ceiling. The customer's use compared to the ceiling establishes the actual use that they will be billed for. So we recommend that we move to the alternative strategy of December through February, except in cases necessitating inclusion of March, where we had to estimate readings because we had ice or snow or both on the ground that prevented us from reading those meters. And in those cases, we would average those, the February and the March, to determine the number to be used for February. If we have any questions, we'd be more happy to answer those.
Any questions? Okay, well, we have a motion on the resolution.
Move we adopt the resolution.
A motion and a second on the resolution. Voting. Resolution is approved. Next item is approval of RFP for fats, oils, and grease reduction pilot program.
So there are 3 or 4 main causes of sewer backups, and the accumulation of fat, oil, and grease in sewer lines is a large contributor. We're already working on controlling another large contributor to sewer backups. That's roots growing, and tree roots and plant roots growing in the sewers. So this is the next phase. We're looking at a couple of different options for how to keep grease solubilized and moving through sewers. It will be a pilot program, which we assess what works best for us. Other sewer utilities do use these kinds of programs, but we don't have local experience yet to tell us whether that's a good solution for us.
In this particular issue, Marcia, are the residential customers as big offenders as the industrial, or is it about even, or is it one?
Yes, it's interesting. Essentially, the more people you have in an area, the more likely you are to have grease accumulation. It's just kind of embarrassing.
Is part of this proposal perhaps a public education program to get people to stop dumping their grease down the drains?
Yes, we are out working. We're working both with restaurants and also at consumer events, giving them advice about how to store grease in your refrigerator, giving them lids you can place on your cans. It's a program called FOGSI. So we are doing things proactively with our customers. It is modest in its effort, and this is the part for. And once the grease gets there.
Any other questions or comments? Have a motion.
Move the item.
A motion and a second to approve the item. Voting. Item's approved. The last item on the regular agenda is the renewal of a lease agreement with Oklahoma City Property Investors for storage of utility department equipment.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 8D. Other questions or comments? Hearing none. Voting, please. It's approved. Next item is new business. Is there new business? Comments from trustee? Oh,
A question, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. This morning at City Council meeting, we had an item that related to a CNG facility. I asked the question if the city had given any consideration to opening up CNG facilities to the public until the private sector gets built up enough to fill those needs. And I was told that the water department was way ahead of me, that they had already started this kind of thing.
We're attempting that with our facility at 115th and Portland. We believe there may be some external market or some shared market. Mr. Weingart is the person who's been working with the finance department, Mr. Flowers.
Our trust chairman, our trust engineer could probably speak on the status of our CNG efforts at this time. OSEED is where he's currently working on, but we plan to move to Aquat activities as soon as we get that first phase done.
Again, Tim Johnson. I'm sorry.
My question is not if we're doing it, is if we're sharing it with the public. I guess, is that the question? Do you understand my question?
Yes, I do. On the site, the solid waste site, we are in the process of developing an RFP that we're going to submit out to attempt to attract some providers of the equipment and operations on one of two different ways, either a lease back or a purchase and an operation contract. And we're working with the water staff on that. We've been meeting with the private industry with regard to how best to provide that service. That would either be directed for city vehicle use only and or the possibility of having an operator like an OnQ or somebody like that that could also take advantage of having it open to the public. And so that we're in the process of doing that. We're also meeting with the energy advisor to the Water Trust. I'm having a conference call with him tomorrow afternoon to try and tie a bow around that so we can get that RFP out quickly. So we're trying to get that out soon.
Mr. Trustee, once we got the proposals back, we would be able to take that information to OSEED so OSEED could determine which is in its best interest concerning whether to restrict it to city vehicles only or open it up on the market. And, at this time we don't have the facts to go with which option we should choose based upon what kind of governmental regulations or bureaucracy we would face with that. So we want to go through that process before we have a firm recommendation, but we believe that it's going to be likely that we could make it possible for open to the public as well. That's where the City of Norman, we've talked to them about that, and that's the vein in which they're going at this time. We're all moving in the same direction. We just aren't quite at a point where we can make that a firm recommendation yet.
I've gathered that would be the preference of the council today. If there's any way that we can make that work, then we ought to try to do that.
Encourage use of CNG vehicles. One of the objections that I hear frequently is whether to replace the vehicles. You can buy a system you put in your garage.
Yeah.
So if we could open up that market slightly until the private sector gets there, and they'll get there when the demand is big enough. But in the interim, that's what we move along.
We don't want to compete, but we want to help encourage. I understand.
Any other matters?
Mr. Chairman, the 5 emergency contracts, is there any need to call a special meeting?
Well, I was going to ask that.
We are scheduled for a workshop next Tuesday to talk about the drought. So we could potentially schedule it at that
When
time.
is it set for? 2 o'clock?
1 to 3?
What?
1 to 3?
1 to 3.
We'll get back to your schedule.
Okay.
We'll get back to your
Well, we
calendars
could
and
put
make
that
certain
on
that
there.
you're all.
Okay, Shirley.
Well, I think, is the West Town tour going to occur on October?
We're just busy people, aren't we? Busy, busy, busy.
We'll check on the schedule.
We will.
Okay.
So we need a motion to defer them to October 4th.
We do.
Do we have such a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second to refer those emergency items to October 4th. Voting, please. They're deferred. Any other items to come before the trust? Hearing none, we're adjourned.